doing what he does best, making news at home.
President Trump standing before the world and putting it on notice. He's not backing off at all in terms of his ambition to take control of Greenland.
CNN with Wolf Blitzer and away.
Well, let's get back to the breaking news now that Donald Trump says a framework deal has been reached over Greenland, which will have economic consequences and an impact on our markets today.
Donald Trump pflegt das Image des Systemsprengers. In Davos hat sich dafür heute erneut Amerikas Verbündete vorgeknöpft.
Australia and Germany, and of course here in the UK.
Another day, another rambling speech from the President of the United States, this time at Davos. He said that he wanted to annex Greenland, but ruled out using military force.
And why? Well, perhaps, or warum, President Trump ist gestern in Davos eingetroffen und hat eine beeindruckende Rede über Grönland gehalten. Was he channeling his inner Basil Fawlty?
Don't mention the war. I mentioned it once, but I think I got away with it all right.
We could be speaking German and even
a little Japanese, perhaps.
Let's go through the extraordinary, around 70 minutes, at times rather rambling speech. Mum might have gone to Iceland, and so occasionally did President Trump, for bizarre reasons, when he's actually after Greenland. But here's some of the most newsworthy moments.
And then after the war, which we won it big. Without us, right now, you'd all be speaking German and a little Japanese, perhaps. After the war, we gave Greenland back to Denmark. How stupid were we to do that? But we did it.
Let's focus a little bit on the idea of force.
We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force, where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay, now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force.
Now, at home, he's had problems with ice. It didn't get a lot better in Davos as he mixed Iceland with Greenland.
They're not there for us on Iceland, that I can tell you. I mean, our stock market took the first dip yesterday because of Iceland. So Iceland's already cost us a lot of money. But that dip is peanuts compared to what it's gone up.
And, of course, in a long-winded speech, he did tilt at windmills.
There are windmills all over Europe. There are windmills all over the place. And they are losers. One thing I've noticed is that the more windmills a country has, the more money that country loses and the worse that country is doing.
And no French resistance about Emmanuel Macron.
It became very tough. So when I called up Emmanuel Macron, I watched him yesterday with those beautiful sunglasses. What the hell happened?
And in the snowy climes of Davos, Switzerland, is he daddy cool?
They loved me. They called me daddy, right, last time. A very smart man said, he's our daddy. He's running it. I was like running it. I went from running it to being a terrible human being.
The smart man to whom he refers is NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who called him daddy last year. And he is the person, Rutte, with whom President Trump says he's now got a framework. But back to business. After his wide-ranging speech, the President did indeed meet with Mark Rutte, as I said, and announced he'd reached a framework for that deal, offering few details. But both he and, interestingly, Mark Rutte described the talks as very productive. President Trump briefly speaking with reporters afterwards.
It's a long-term deal. It's the ultimate long-term deal. And I think it puts everybody in a really good position, especially as it pertains to security and minerals and everything else.
And let's start with the idea. And if you belong to a certain generation, my late father served in the Second World War. My mum did her bit in the Second World War. There was this thought that, but for what they did, but for the Americans, we'd all be speaking German. But in reality, let's turn to Saul David, professor, military historian, Sunday Times bestselling author, broadcaster, my favourite historian, it has to be said, who joins me now. Right, it's often been asserted, without Uncle Sam, without the US, you and I would now be probably conversing in German. I can do a little bit, but not a great deal. How real are these claims in your book? Saul, good morning.
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly demeaning on the contribution made by all the other allies, and there were many of them actually known as the United Nations during the Second World War itself, Nick. But there is a kernel of truth in what he says. Let's think of some of the statistics, shall we? Right at the beginning of the war, interestingly enough, the American military was tiny, the 17th largest army. But from 1940 onwards, when the writing was beginning to be on the wall, it began to build up its military and economic might. Think of this, Nick. In the first year after America entered the war, it outproduced in economic and military terms the Axis states combined. Twice as many tanks it built, twice as many aircraft, and 6 times as many artillery pieces. That's just 1942 alone. By the end of the Second World War, American output had doubled, and it was contributing 2/3 of all Allied military equipment: 297,000 aircraft, 193,000 artillery pieces, 86,000 tanks, and 2 million army trucks. So would the rest of the world have won the Second World War against the Axis powers without the United States? Most certainly not. The Soviet Union might have gone down in 1941, 1942. Britain would probably have succumbed at some point. So I'm afraid I have to say, although it's a pretty demeaning comment to make, there is some truth in what Trump says.
What about his historical references to Greenland, how they took Greenland off us? That was a done deal. Professor?
Yeah, no, they didn't take Greenland off them. What happened is that America rather sensibly realized the strategic importance of Greenland and the need to keep it out of Axis, chiefly German hands. So if we think of the sequence of events, Nick, 9th of April 1940, Germany invades Denmark. Denmark, of course, was the sovereign keeper of Greenland then, as it is now. And Denmark collapsed in just 6 hours, infamously. I mean, Danes still say today, never again 9 April. So they're pretty shamed by what happened then. And America, understandably, thought, well, we need to get our hands on Greenland. If the Germans get bases there, this could be a real threat to us. So they did a deal effectively to become the protectors of Greenland, with the sort of tacit understanding it would be handed back at the end of the war, which indeed it was, and it's still in Danish sovereignty. But there is an important caveat here. First of all, the Americans tried to buy it in 1946 for, they say, about $100 million. That was turned down by the Denmark government. But they did do a deal in 1951 to keep bases there, and they still, of course, have full air base on Greenland. And what I imagine this deal that they've now done with NATO, and presumably the Danes too, is to increase their security presence there. Possibly there's a minerals deal thrown in. We don't know yet because we haven't heard the details, Nick.
Professor, always enjoy speaking with you. Thank you so much. Saul David, Professor, military historian, Sunday Times best-selling author and broadcaster. Now, we talk of the art of the deal. What of the psychology of the deal? This is effectively, is it not, a New York property developer who goes in and effectively wants to shoot the lights out, throw everyone out of the window, and then will mediate and will do a deal? Well, that's how I look at it, but let's talk to an expert. Ian Robertson is Emeritus Professor of Psychology at Trinity College Dublin, author of The Winner Effect: How Power Affects Your Brain. I would imagine, sir, you and I could talk until 10 o'clock this morning with your views on the psychology of Donald Trump, but if we could slightly sub those views, has power kind of got to him? Do you see effectively a businessman acting as a president? Professor, good morning.
Yeah. Good morning, Nick. Yes, he is essentially a businessman. He really thinks only about money and possessions, and he is hugely greedy and hugely, all he thinks about is getting more and more and more money. And power and money go together with him. All the deals he's made politically have been financial deals as much or even more than political deals. Now, the only thing we've known since ever human beings started working together in groups and tribes, leaders, we need leaders for the tribes, the groups, and gradually until about the 12th or 13th century, they realized that leaders go a bit mad with the power that we give them. And that's because of the effects of power in the brain, which has cocaine-like properties. And it makes people, it has all these effects on the brain. It makes people disinhibited. It makes them, their judgment poor. It makes them make very bad decisions when, like Hitler did and Napoleon. And so gradually human beings invented these things called democracy, the artifacts of democracy, free press, elections, independent judiciary. And these were the external governance constraints which are the only ways of trying to constrain power. And I think a bit of that was operating yesterday with the internal American pressures on Trump because of the market effects and the other effects of the country. The only other constraints in power are internal constraints in the individual human brain, which are moral, ethical, religious. Donald Trump never grew up with any of these. His father was a fascist. His father said, "Look, the only principle is it's a zero-sum game, and power is right.
Strength is all.
If you're not a winner, you're a loser." And that's why Trump said, "I like winning. I like winning." That's what he said a couple of weeks ago, and he wants to win. And Mark Rutte and maybe Keir Starmer have given him a win. Hopefully, he's now got property on Greenland. They're maybe going to do a Cyprus-like sovereign territory for bits of Greenland for bases. And now he can say, "I've got a win. I've done Venezuela. I've done this. I've stopped 8 wars." But he won't stop there. He'll need more. There'll be something else next. Who knows? Cuba, Colombia. So God help us. Britain.
Well,
he will want more. He will want more.
Let's hope it's not the United Kingdom or indeed Ireland.